Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we continue our summer garden review series and we'll review the top garden. Let's get going. So we'll begin this video by sort of doing an overview of the top garden. The top garden was the first garden that we put in ourselves whenever we purchased the property. It began with like being an in-ground bed, and we realized early on that wasn't going to work. So in the fall of last year, fall into the winter, we found a bunch of recycled wood. We bought some screws and we rebuilt it. We put raised beds in, we filled them with a bunch of mulch in the bottoms, and then we put compost in the top of them. So that's kind of, the way this garden came to be. So before we get too far into the actual beds themselves, let's take a look at some of Leslie's flowers.
Good morning, everybody. So last week we talked about our summer review in our old garden. This week we're talking about the top garden, and just kind of wanted to talk about my flowers, what happened. I didn't rate last week just because I was like everything. I just talked about what worked and what didn't and how things are going. It's similar to what I'm going to do today, but I just wanted to show you what transpired. So at the beginning, I put this little flower bed in because I was like, we need a little bit more color down here. We need something to kind of spice up the top garden to make it cute. And I built this little raised bed. We had some repurposed wood that we had. It was a little frame that was already put together. So I put it down, put some compost in, and my landscaping stones. And at the Master Gardener's Plant Sale, I got some bee balm. So this is bee balm. Jeremy calls them butterfly bushes because that's what they look like, and they attract a lot of butterflies and bees. It's kind of spreading out instead of going up, but it's supposed to climb or get tall. But this is the first year, so this is the growth of the bee balm. I would say this gets an A- just because it didn't get tall like I thought it would. But again, this is the first year, so when it dies back, I'm hoping next year it does get the height that it's supposed to get. These things will get about 3.5 to 4 foot tall, and they have beautiful blooms on them. This year we didn't get any blooms just because it needed time to settle. The chickens have been in and out of here, so I'm thinking that's why it didn't bush out the way it did. But overall, it's doing great, and it's filling in, and the root system's healthy, so I'm super happy about that. And then right here is my lemon balm. I am so excited about lemon balm. Put this in your teas. It's fantastic. I just come out and eat the leaves. They're so tasty. And it's a mosquito repellent. So love that it's out here in the top garden. I can be out here and not worry about mosquitoes. And it gets an A+, man. This thing has just bushed out. It's gorgeous. I love it. It smells good. And then this guy. So, okay, this was a volunteer loofah. It was a seed, I guess, that sprouted when I put that compost in from last year. And I tell you, 2 plants of loofahs produce so many seeds. This thing has gone crazy. I mean, my goal was for it. I was like, well, it's going to come up, let it do its thing and see what happens. My goal for this thing was for it to go this way down the fence line. However, it decided to go this way. It's on our gate, so we have to be extra careful when we open the gate because it is weighted down. And I don't know if you can see, but my goodness, guys, I've got at least 20 loofahs on here that came up. I'm overrun with loofahs. That's why these things are going to be gifts this year. I'm just going to hand them out as I dry them because they're just everywhere. I've got new loofahs growing, like this little guy. Now, when they're about this size, a little bit bigger, you can actually eat these things. Tasty. Texture of I think a cucumber, but kind of squashy flavor. I haven't tried them yet just because I love the fact that I can let these things get giant, pluck them off when they're ready, turn them into a sponge. So This thing gets like an A++. I don't know what else to say about this loofah, but it's taken over our lives. It's great though. And then this was our wildflower space. I don't know if you remember, but we had come in and I got a new flower mix this year. I normally use the Burpees brand wildflower or butterfly mix because it's so prolific, and it just flooded my beds last year. And it was gorgeous. There were a variety of flowers, mostly zinnias, black-eyed Susans. There was just everything in here. Poppies. I'm telling you, it was gorgeous last year. And I was kind of disappointed. My new mix I got was, it was a brand, and I think Mother something, but it was for Save the Bees. So it kind of donated some of the proceeds over to help save the bees in the U.S. And I was super excited to try it. But my thing was, most of it was cosmos. I didn't get the variety. A lot of these zinnias you see here are from the original mix that I collected seeds from last year. I had Jeremy come out and he just spread them down the rest of the bed. And those have done so well. My cosmos have since died off. This was the space of the cosmos. I have a sunflower that I put in, and it's ready to come out. I just haven't pulled it yet, but I do have some other sprouts coming up from that mix. A lot of them are like the little daisies that you get, the little yellow daisies. There's some wild red clover that was in the mix. I don't know if you can see it. Let's get in here. Red clover. Rabbits love that. Not excited, don't want rabbits in our garden, which of course we don't usually have rabbits because the cats chase them off, and Ray likes to chase them. But here's another thing of cosmos. It's gonna get another bloom. But if you come down here, this is where we spread my seeds from last year. I collected the seeds from zinnias and marigolds, and so there's some cosmos in here, just a mix, and we just came out and spread it around. I will give this thing a hard C. I was sad that the new mixture didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But my seeds did. This is gorgeous. I mean, look at this zinnia. I mean, it's huge. It's gorgeous. I love them. And these are so pretty in a flower arrangement. And 1, 2, or 3 seeds, I mean, 2 or 3 plants just came up and they spread like crazy. And as long as you deadhead them, they'll continue to bloom. So I've got new blooms there. This one's probably gonna open in the next few days, and there's so much color. I wanted to show you this color just because I've never gotten this color. It's so gorgeous, and it's huge. And then my cosmos, they're still hanging on. We've got some marigolds. Fun story. We planted these marigold seeds, and we had that hard spell of heat. They didn't come up. I was sad, and I was like, okay, we need marigolds. Marigolds are great. They attract good bugs into the yard, take out the bad ones. They help with mosquitoes. Like, they do great. They're finally starting to bloom. I don't know if you can see it. And these are the mammoth double headers. Like, it's just pretty. I love them. And they're yellow. Usually they'll come up orange or yellow, and we've got yellow ones this year, so I'm super excited. And they're still spreading like wildfire. So here's another zinnia. So, and then this was a few sprouts of zinnia, and I tell you, when I say these things go crazy as long as you deadhead them, it has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and more flowers have come up on it. So this portion, I would say we're at a B+, because here we are, middle of September, should not have this many flowers, but our weather pattern it's like reversed. So I know they were talking about a reverse spring. I think that's kind of what we got. Good morning, Red. But for me, this was kind of a bummer, but now I'm seeing some of the happy rewards of it, and it's making me happy. So, and with that, I just wanted to say thank you for checking it out with us. And next year, this thing's gonna be loaded. It's gonna be full of flowers. I've got goals. I've got the Burpees brand on the back burner. We're gonna smash it next year. So for this year, overall, my flower space gets a hard C just because I didn't get the variety that I wanted. But loofahs and lemon balm and bee balm, yeah, those are on the upper end of grading. So appreciate you guys, and we'll talk soon.
What's up, Beansy? Well, as you saw, Leslie's pollinators and flowering plants did really well this year. They really do help bring in a lot of pollinators, and our bees love them, hummingbirds, that sort of stuff. So I think the next thing that we're going to do is let's take a look at what the top garden looked like at the end of June, so we sort of have a frame of reference. So what we'll do as a format on this video is I'll show you the way the area currently looks for what we're discussing, and then we'll discuss how well that specific vegetable did. Right now, right down here where we put this new bed in, this was put in the last few weeks or so. This is a new carrot bed that we're going to grow our spring and fall carrots into. But in the summer of 22, that's where our potatoes were planted. So our potatoes were an abject failure. A lot of that had to do with the heat and the lack of water that we received from the beginning of June all the way through the middle of August. So, you know, you're looking at 8 to 10 weeks that were over 100 degrees, either actual temperature or feels like, and we hardly received any precipitation. Difficult word. Anyway, so I give them an F. What I ended up doing with them was they came up really good. We healed them with some compost and straw. Ironically, we did that 2 days before the last rain, and that happened the last week of May. We didn't get it again until middle of August, like I said. So what happened was we ended up letting it rain, and then I came out to dig up the potatoes. I ended up breaking a shovel digging them up. The ground was so hard. I got really frustrated. I ended up pulling, I think, like 6 or 7 pounds, and that was from one little spot. And to be honest with you, I just said to heck with it, and I took the tiller and I ran the tiller through where the potatoes were and just broke them all up into little bitty pieces, and just said, well, experiment failed. So from now on, we'll grow our potatoes in buckets or in raised beds. No more in-ground potatoes for us. Our soil here just does not work very well with that. Okay, so with potatoes, that is an F. Okay, so the next thing we're going to cover is this bed right here. And over the course of the summer of 2022, we grew golden wax beans. And you can see now we have our fall tomatoes planted in there now. So, Beansy! He loves this garden. Wax beans, we'll keep this short and sweet. The wax beans get an A. We ate them probably for, I don't know, 5-6 weeks, 2 to 3 times a week we would have them for a meal. I didn't can any of them because I love them so much. I'm considering maybe growing more next year so I have an excess for the fall. We're gonna see what happens, but just to keep it short and sweet, the wax beans get an A and we loved everything about them. So the next bed we will cover will be this guy right here. For the fall going into it, we're growing beets in there, and you can see these guys are coming along fantastic right now. But in the summer of 2022, what we ended up growing in here were pole beans, and they did not do very well. Yeah, the pole beans get a big fat D. We got some pole beans off of them. The trellis looked really good, but the beans, they just kept growing like super tall and they hardly put off any. I wonder if it has a little bit to do with the position of the garden and the stuff around them. But anyway, next year we will not be growing pole beans. Considering how well all of our bush beans did, we're just gonna stick with the bush beans and go from there. So, like I said, D for the pole beans. We're going to do these next 2 beds together, I believe. The reason for that is they both had tomatoes. So right now, this is our lettuce and radish bed for the fall, but this contained our summer batch of our Roma tomatoes. Earlier, we saw our fall batch of Roma tomatoes. And this over here, you can see they're still going to town, but this had our Beefmaster tomatoes, and you can get in there and see we're getting another round. We've had a few of them. So we kept these alive through the drought and the heat and such, but right now you can see the effort is paying off. So we'll spend just a bit more time here on the tomato beds. This was the first year that we grew all of our own plants here on the homestead. So we started everything from seed, and everything worked out really well. We put in the greenhouse, we started our tomatoes, our peppers, eggplants, all of those things. Even though it was a super challenging late spring into summer, our tomatoes rocked. We had a designated space that we wanted to fill with frozen tomatoes. We filled that quickly. We were also able to pass out several tomatoes this year. Tomatoes are one of those things that because so many of our close friends and family want tomatoes, we don't pass them out very often. By the time we get extras, they're usually spoken for. But one of our plans going forward is if we have tomatoes like this in a normal year, we'll probably have plenty that we'll be able to pass out to other folks. But back on topic, I think going forward, this is the space that we're going to use for the tomatoes. I'm giving the tomatoes a B. And the only reason I'm giving them a B is because I just can't help but feel like we could have gotten more in a normal year. Even though I can't, necessarily control the weather, I can control things like how much moisture they get, how often I trim them and fertilize them and that sort of thing. So I think if I put a little bit more attention into them, I can get more tomatoes. But overall, it was absolutely fantastic. A very solid B for our tomatoes. Now this next bed is quite interesting. You can see right now our turnip greens are going great guns in there. But in the summer of 2022, this bed contained ground cherries. It was our first time growing the ground cherries and we loved everything about them. Again, this is another B for me. The ground cherries get a B because of user error. I planted way too many of them in that one bed. I got overzealous, and that was kind of a theme this year, I think. Nonetheless, we got a boat ton of ground cherries because of the way we watered. We got them consistently all the way through the summer. They have a fantastic flavor. A lot of our friends and family really enjoyed them. So that's something that from now on here on the homestead, we will always grow ground cherries. Instead of putting 8 ground cherries though in that little bed, I think I'm gonna cut it in half and just do 4 right down the middle for next year. And we'll see how that ends up working out. All right, so this bed here, we actually grew cabbage in it in the early spring. It did really well. The heads didn't get quite as big as we wanted before we had to pull them for our summer garden, but they did do really well. In the summer garden, this bed contained purple hull peas. The purple hull peas are short and sweet on this one. They get an A. We love everything about purple hull peas. We got a lot of purple hull peas out of this small bed, so this is something we might end up continuing doing. We do have a larger garden that we've shown before that we grow purple hulls in. We just got so many out of this raised bed that I'm either going to mimic this bed somewhere else so I can grow them in bulk, or I'll just grow a couple different rounds in here. So again, purple hull peas get an A. So the last of the beds up here that we'll discuss today is right here. You can see now we have in our fall garden, we have our carrots coming up. We're really excited about having fall carrots and apparently a couple radishes that I threw in for good measure. That was all an accident, just FYI. But in the summer garden, this contained, as we had zucchini and yellow squash. For the zucchini and the yellow squash, I'm gonna have to kind of break these up. And like the video I talked about earlier with the yellow squash that we had in the old garden, the variety I thought I got two different varieties. I only got one kind of variety. They were all the early crooknecks. And so we got a whole bunch of yellow crookneck squash, and we got it super early in the year. We were giving it away, and in my noggin, I was thinking, oh, well, we're gonna get this through, most of the spring and summer. So I was giving it away, being very cavalier with it. And then, early June, it just started dying off. And at first I thought it was because of the heat and the lack of water. It wasn't. It was because that's what it was supposed to do. So the yellow crookneck squash, it did really well. So, I don't want to rate it too low. So I'm going to give it a C. And a lot of that was because my expectations just weren't accurate. The zucchini did really well right up until about the end of July, whenever everything was dying off. And the only thing in our area to eat were the plants we were keeping alive. So we lost them earlier than what I would have liked. So I'm going to give them a B. But they were delicious. We had a lot of them when they were there. They did take a whole lot of work, though, in the summertime. And they start putting off flowers and they got eaten up. So the end was a little disappointing. So overall, I'm going to give them a B. And then I'm going to put this whole bed here together as a C+. So overall, we're going to give the top garden a very solid B for this year. We got a lot of food. We met all of our goals as far as putting up our tomatoes and that sort of thing, and we ate on it a lot. Another thing that I'd like to point out is it held up really well over the course of the summer. We had a lot of heat. We didn't get a whole lot of rain, but in the last few weeks we have, and it's still looking good, so we didn't have a whole lot of runoff. The potato area was a big disappointment for me. I was really hoping to try to get about 100 pounds of potatoes. So what I've done is I've just sort of swallowed the pride on that one, realized I messed it up, and I'm going back to the drawing board, and eventually I'm gonna grow enough potatoes, dadgummit. Anyway, I would like to say at this point, thank you to everybody who stayed here to the end. We really do appreciate it. If you haven't, consider subscribing to the channel. It goes a long way in helping us reach our goals. It's free for you. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and hit that little thumbs up button. It helps us kind of get recommended to other folks. Until next time, I hope all you folks take care of yourselves. Peace.